I'm here with Ronit Novak. Ronit's worked as a journalist and a creative director and has been in the media business for over 20 years. And her organization, The Grain, puts on events related to AI. She shares tips and advice via her social media and a newsletter. And her podcast, The Grain, looks at how AI and creativity intersect, which is an area that we're really interested in at MediaSmart. So we're really happy to have you here today.
Thank you very much for having me. It is great to be here and to have these very important conversations that people need to be having that they're kind of afraid to have. So happy to broach the topic.
Yeah, absolutely. It's intimidating. And so I would love to know how you got into this area. Like what made you want to focus on AI and to start a podcast focused on AI and creativity specifically?
Yeah, so that is a great question because what compels me to do it is to have these conversations, right? So I've been working in the creative industry for 20 years. I studied creativity in university, how and why artists are compelled to be creative. So my thesis was on the psychology of creativity. And so that's always been a through line for me. And working in media has always been for me building teams and collaborating and directing creatives of all different disciplines to make work together. And that creative spark that happens when you're working with a group of people that are all really interesting and all bring something to the table is kind of like a magic, but a very human magic that I've always kind of been, involved in fostering and manifesting. And the creative industry has been going through struggles over the past few decades, just in terms of like a lot of things. The digital medium has really changed the way that creatives work and the way that they're compensated and the way that they're credited. So these conversations that we have around AI aren't really that new for creatives, except the big crux was generative AI is replacive, right? So that was the big fear for creatives. And so they decided to just ignore it almost collectively. If they could all agree on one thing, it was just that they didn't want to talk about AI. And this was a few years ago. And I saw it coming on the horizon and I thought, guys, like it's kind of a big deal. Like, I think we should talk about this. And it was very difficult to get people to have educated conversations about it too. There was a lot of fear because of the fear mongering in the media, right? And so I decided that I was going to start a podcast where I had people who were experts in the field of creativity, digital media, creative futurists to come on and talk about the pleasure and the peril of AI. So not about AI boosting and not about AI doomering, but let's just have the nuanced conversations in our own sandbox, basically for creatives, by creatives, to have those kinds of like inside baseball conversations that only a filmmaker can really have, or only a musician can really have, or an illustrator or a graphic designer. And these conversations became quite long form, could be an hour and a half. They got really in depth and almost, in a lot of ways spiritual. Like the conversations were so kind of entrenched in how we feel about what's important in life. Why is art and culture and beauty and connection and humanity important to us? So it became more than just about, oh, well, how do we not get replaced by AI? It's like, what is creativity and why is it important to us? And so it just kind of snowballed from there, and it became a newsletter and live events and speaking engagements. And now The Grain is a nonprofit foundation. So a lot of entry points for creatives to come in on as a pay what you can level or free or donation so that we can just bring the community together. That's the important thing. I don't want any gatekeeping. Like, I want a lot of different opinions, a lot of different people to come together and just have these conversations together as a team.
I love that. And I love that you're doing it, at this level when it's really focused on creativity. And part of the reason why we connected was, your interest in how people are using these tools responsibly, and, with a critical eye. And so what have you been kind of hearing or seeing around the general public's current ability to do this? I know we're kind of pivoting a little bit, but what basic skills do you think we need to teach? And in relation to creativity as well and using it for creativity.
Right. So, yes, there is a lot of conversation about how people are losing their creative agency or their critical thinking because they're using ChatGPT and they're relying on it so much for idea generation and content creation. There just came out about a week ago an article in The Atlantic about how people are losing their creative agency to ChatGPT. And it's just very much in widespread consciousness. And it doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to lose creative agency to an AI tool. The reason why we do is because there is a lot of hype that these machines are smarter than us, right? That they will replace us. And who's saying that? It's not necessarily the creatives who started that dialogue. A lot of that rhetoric was started by the creators of those tools to magnify the impact and the importance of those tools. So that's why it's so important for creatives to get together and talk about how they're using those tools, right, in effective ways. So when I speak with students, and I've done a lot of talking to media and university level students about using AI, first, you want to come in, and here's some kind of practical tips. When you come in and you approach an AI tool, one, you want to always have your ideas written down. Like I use cue cards. I always write ideas down on cue cards. This is what you're approaching the tool with first. You start with your own ideas and concepts. Then, when your AI tool responds or attempts to replace that, you have the receipts. You can say, wait a minute, I came here with my own ideas. Is this AI now making me feel like it's smarter than me? The interesting thing about AI tools, they're not smarter than you. Yes, they might have read every single book on the planet, right? But they don't have your experiences, your emotion, what you're trying to convey creatively or intellectually or spiritually into your creative product. Only you are the expert in that. It could have read every book in the world 10 times over, but never could an AI tool convey that creator's personal experience and what it's trying to convey. There's nuance within a human that an AI tool simply can't gather in the world of data on the internet. So that's one thing that I always say when you're approaching an AI tool: have your ideas first, write down your receipts, then keep track of your interaction with the AI tool. At what point did it sway you? At what point did you push back? And think about it critically. So we talk about critical thinking, but you need to think critically about your AI tool. Look at it as if you're the boss and it's your employee, right? Did you like that response? Did you not like that response? In the end, you're the master in this situation. It's really just like a scholar, but not the kind of guru sensei in like a creator AI interaction.
I think that's really important. I think it's a really important thing to teach young people when they're first using these tools. I mean, I also think it's something that you do understand when you start to use the tool. You start to see its limitations and you start to see, the problems. But, we are older, we've been, doing this work for longer. So I think it is important because we already have that background information and young people don't necessarily have that, right? And I think also reminding them that their perspective and their lived experience really matters and is valued. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of people think that AI is just smarter than them. And so they relinquish control immediately. And I think that we just need to change the framework of how we talk about AI tools. And that's why creators need to get together and talk about their actual real experience working with it and talk about where it hallucinated and where it was wrong. And we need to really have these conversations, maybe even those hallucinations. And I've seen a lot of creators use hallucinations in innovative ways because that is just kind of a characteristic of the tool. So when you're being a creative, what does the AI bring to the table that you can, play around with and be surprised by, and maybe work within your framework, but not let it take over, but just acknowledge it and think, oh, maybe these weird idiosyncrasies that an AI tool has is something I can use. So that's something that only creators who are working with the tools can talk about. But, Sam Altman and Mark Zuckerberg aren't going to talk about that. They're really only going to talk about how amazing and powerful and, impactful their tools are.
Yeah, totally. And we've been, playing with AI and putting together some messaging for our, public awareness campaigns and different initiatives. And like you're saying, it's interesting to see, when is it getting it right? When is it not getting it right? What can we take and what should we leave? And what do you think charities like us should keep in mind when we're using AI to use it effectively and use it ethically when doing this kind of work?
That's a really important question because charities are always mindful of finances and budgets, right? And you're doing good work, and it's not like a big corporation that's just trying to eliminate jobs for efficiency. You're just trying to do your work better, and that makes a lot of sense. Some things that you do want to keep in mind, I would say there are two things. One is that AI can be biased, and it can provide very generic results, either in its visuals or in its text. And when you're a charity or a nonprofit, you're really specifically talking to a certain demographic of people. And when a generative AI result is generic, it's not hitting your mark at all. People are going to resist it because they can see right away, that you're not talking to them anymore. I'm not seeing myself represented in this content. So that's something you really need to be aware of, whether it's even just prompting like a certain racial group or an age or something like that. You really want to make sure that that's part of your results. Another thing with nonprofits and charities is that in a lot of the cases, you're employing the very people that you're addressing with your charity. So, if it's like people with disabilities or different racial groups, you're working with those people in the process. And if you take those people out of the equation because you're replacing them with AI tools, then you're not actually doing your work effectively anymore because you've lost like an entire swath of people that you were actually working to help. So that's something to keep in mind too. You want to keep those people in the loop because they create your relevance, right? And your value. Keep them in the loop. Teach them how to use those AI tools, right? And you never know, maybe those people, because they come at such an interesting vantage point, they can use those AI tools in new and innovative ways that you might have not thought of and that maybe people out in the for-profit sector aren't considering.
I think that's really important, that kind of keeping that human in the loop, and folks can kind of take the temperature of that content and see, like, does it stack up in the real world? Does it speak to lived experience? And that kind of thing. So I think that's really important to call out. And I just want to shift a little bit. Your podcast, dives into so many different topics. It's really fascinating. You've got AI versus advertising, AI versus ethics versus bias. If you did an episode called AI versus media literacy, what would be one of the top things you'd want to talk about?
One of the top things I would talk about, AI versus media literacy. So a lot of my podcasts, all of them actually, are framed with advertising versus AI, music versus AI. And yes, they are in opposition, but they're also complementary. These disciplines and AI, I see them as kind of working together in the same dojo. And when I am thinking of reflecting a creative discipline or just an area of inquiry with AI, I see them as kind of like competitors, oppositions, but also kind of the yin and the yang. And they're in the dojo together. But when you start a fight, you bow to your opponent and you acknowledge their power and their meaning. And so the first thing that I would do is look at AI and media literacy, and I'll say that they go hand in hand. AI is a very powerful tool that can actually be used to enhance media literacy, right? That can actually be used for positive effects. And I think that one of the first things that I would talk about is not just looking at AI as a demon, but looking at it as this is the lens through which we can see historically how we've been using media to do the bad things we don't want AI to do, right? that they're actually cousins, right? And so when we look at social media literacy, when we look at, legacy media industry, news media, journalism, we need to think about how do we take that, our spidey senses in terms of racial bias, or political bias, or just unfairness, or disadvantaged people being swayed by AI, who are being swayed by media, who are not necessarily that well versed in multiple points of view. We want to look at that and say, okay, well, that's the framework that we've been looking at social media and internet. That kind of literacy is something we need to apply to AI as well. Start there, because those are those tools. And these are the same kinds of, this is the equipment that we need to think about AI literacy as well.
That is totally what we believe at MediaSmarts as well. We believe that AI literacy really is media literacy. It's fundamental, right? It's the same things we've been trying to teach folks for many years around thinking critically, and using a tool, safely, effectively, responsibly. So yeah, we totally agree. And the other thing, we've been seeing, obviously, is the rise of deepfakes. Deepfakes have been around for a long time, but it's just so much easier now than ever. I know, we're worried about the possible end of having credible and original content, or at least being able to trust, right, what we see. I almost shared a deepfake video, this cute video of this little boy and a baby, and I almost shared it with my husband the other day.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked through the comments, and people were like, "This is AI." And I looked at it again a few times, and I was like, "Yep, this is AI." But it's impossible to tell now. It really is.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a concern that we have. Are we going to just decide we don't want to be on these social media platforms anymore because we can't tell what's true and what's not? But I guess my question being, for creators, right, and for folks in this space, like, what should we be doing to help kind of improve that information ecosphere that we have?
Yeah, so social media is an interesting case study because a lot of creators benefit from social media in terms of their marketing. A lot of them are content creators and influencers, and their ideas and their work gets disseminated through social media. And they've already taken the cut of creating work for free to appease the algorithm. And a lot of them might have even changed the way that they communicate now. Instead of maybe longer form videos, they do very quick 1-minute videos with a hook, and so they've already changed their language, and they're providing information for free in order to kind of appease this algorithm and get what they can out of social media. So they've given, and now here comes deepfakes that are like just saying, okay, thanks guys, like we don't need you anymore now. And it's interesting to see how social media has evolved from, when it first came out, 20 years ago, you would photograph like your latte art from above, right? And this was very beautiful. And it was just kind of like slices of life that, now seem very like nostalgic and quaint. And even back then people were annoyed by, but there was something that was somewhat authentic, even though it was polished. Then kind of fast forward 7-8 years, then you see more influencers with polished kitchens and, maybe some facial filters and stuff like that. Things started morphing, right, into becoming more and more polished. And now you have deepfakes and they're AI generated. And we have taken humans out of the equation completely, and it's an even more polished image. So my question, and I don't have an answer for you, is just, is social media going to stick around? Will there be longevity there? Or was it just a medium that has now kind of run its course and it's kind of gross now? Like, I know for me, I scroll through and I'm done. I see a couple of, they're either they're AI generated images or they're just marketing images. And it's not what it used to be, that connection. And I mean, that's where creatives need to come into the loop and say, we did benefit from social media. I got jobs out of social media. I got paid. I have an Instagram store. Can they save social media? That's what we need to get together and talk about, right? So stay tuned. I'll probably have, now inspired from today, like AI versus social media on my podcast, where we can talk to influencers about, how is social media going to evolve, if it evolves even?
Yeah, something we're gonna have to keep an eye on and just see, right? It's all evolving so quickly that I think, we'll probably look back in 5 years and it'll all seem, yeah, so, quaint or who knows, right? It's hard to say.
Yeah,
And there may be a brand new kind of platform that we haven't imagined yet. I remember
exactly.
people there was people were already getting sick of our social media feeds, and they came up with that, I think, Be Real. Remember that platform where people were taking a selfie at a specific time of day, and you had to drop
Yeah,
what you were doing and just take that picture in the moment, because I think people
right.
want that authenticity, right? They want real.
That's right.
So
And MySpace and Vine, like these are all social media platforms that people are nostalgic for now. Friendster, like and people want the connection, but they just don't want the kind of fakery and the polish. So maybe a new media will crop up, whether it's called social media or maybe it's happening in more kind of private chat rooms. And I'm seeing that a lot more. It's a lot of WhatsApp groups or Slack or Discord now, where instead of your social media being open to the public, it's much more kind of private, closed door conversations.
yeah, absolutely. And so we've been keeping an eye at Media Smarts on how AI is impacting different creative industries like advertising and film, TV, book publishing. And so, are you seeing any promising developments in Canada when it comes to protecting creators' rights around AI?
Yeah, I'm seeing the most promise and movement with the music industry in Canada. So SOCAN, their CEO Jennifer Brown just met with our Prime Minister Mark Carney in November to talk about copyright protections for musicians and artists and creators in Canada. She also spoke at the House of Commons in Ottawa in October. So I'm seeing that SOCAN is really making like kind of grand gestures and advocacy for creatives. And we'll see where that goes. Right now, there hasn't been much response to it, but we just do see that SOCAN is really pushing for creatives and artists, and that's paralleling what we're seeing in the U.S. There's been a tremendous amount just in the past few weeks of licensing partnerships that have happened between the big record labels in the U.S. And AI generative music tools like UDO and SOCAN, partnering with Warner, Universal, Sony. And that to me says that there are grand seismic shifts happening in music. And Canada is, because we are in a unique space right now with the given administration in the US, where we're trying to maintain cultural sovereignty here. So I think that that's a really interesting idea when we talk about AI literacy and copyright protections here in Canada is what is the Canadian cultural voice, right? And how do we protect and create that here? Because there's only so much that we can protect, but we actually have to produce a lot of that here too. And so I'm seeing SOCAN is making big moves that way. I'm hoping that news journalism kind of passes. They've been, there's some lawsuits with OpenAI and class action lawsuits with major media companies here in Canada. But I haven't seen much headway happening there, but we shall see. We have an AI minister for the first time, and he's got an AI task force, some very smart people that are advising him on, how we can protect different industries in Canada with respect to AI creativity, but other industry as well. And so, I think Canada is making moves, and I think that the issue is just that we're kind of, our neighbor is going in a whole other direction that doesn't protect Canadian sovereignty. And so we need to look within ourselves, and we need to talk amongst ourselves, and our creators need to say we're producing material that's valuable and we're using AI, we're not ignoring it, we're thinking about how we can use it in effective and innovative ways.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important to know. And I think that focus on CanCon seems to just be growing stronger and stronger, which is really, really nice to see.
Yeah.
And we know, a lot of creatives who work in various different industries are worried right now, right, about their futures. And so what would you say to somebody who's, a graphic designer or a copywriter or another creative who might have these fears right now, based on what, everyone you've talked to and the conversations you've been having?
Yeah. The fear is coming from outside. The fear is coming from the media, terrifying creatives. And it's not like creatives don't have a lot to be terrified about even without AI. Like, it's been a difficult time for the past couple of decades as creators. So they are already kind of fighting, or they're tired from fighting. And so when the media comes up and says, and you're going to be replaced by AI and you're going to lose your creative agency and nobody needs you anymore and we can do it better, they need to just turn that off, because it's not true. It's not true. I have seen and I've spoken with firsthand and worked with creators who are using AI tools in incredibly innovative ways, or who will not use AI tools and are producing work that's incredible too, right? And that there's a resurgence in kind of pre-digital technologies, and the idea of like VHS cameras or records and vinyl. Like, there's always been this kind of nostalgia, but now with AI, it's just much more kind of mainstream now. Like, let's go back to the 90s, to the 80s, the ideas of people getting together in person. So that's my advice to creatives now, is get together in person. For one, just turn off your social media feed for a minute, take a break, get together one-on-one, or, in groups. I have these live events that are incredibly successful because people say, what they say, like, we love the conversation, but more than that, we love just meeting each other and being in the same place. And obviously, post-pandemic, we're craving that loneliness epidemic. We're craving people getting together to talk. And then one just kind of caveat to that is, yes, you can have a lot of people in the room talking, but a lot of people are also influenced by social media. So their opinions might not be their own. And so that is just something to think about when you're kind of walking in the world and you're talking to people. You might be open to conversation, but doesn't mean other people are. And you just need to be aware of that. That is just something that we need to navigate. So lots of different opinions. A graphic designer could love or hate AI. My suggestion is, you don't have to take a side. What about that? You don't have to have an opinion. You don't have to check off yes or no in the comment section. You can just be open to the nuanced conversation and change your mind tomorrow. That's the great thing about being a creative. Our whole job is to explore and experiment, right? And we're allowed to change our mind. We're allowed to sprinkle in a little AI today and then take that out tomorrow and put a lot more the next day and then take that out. That's our jobs. That's what we're supposed to do. And we're supposed to collaborate with each other to get new ideas to make that happen.
I love that, like working in kind of the shades of gray and not being so, binary pro or con or anything like that. That's great.
Exactly.
So I want to end on a positive note today. And what are some examples of AI for good that you've been seeing out there recently? Things of, positive uses of AI.
Yeah. So I am going to have a creator on my podcast pretty soon. Her name is Debbie Deer. And I saw her at a seminar. She's Jamaican, but she's based in Toronto. And I saw her at a seminar at the NIA Center, which is the Interdisciplinary Black Arts Center here in Toronto. And she's talking about using AI as a tool to, one, reflect how BIPOC people have been marginalized and misrepresented over time, but also that it is now an opportunity for people who have been misrepresented to use these tools to voice themselves. And I think that that is a very refreshing use of AI, because you can see it as a kind of a double-edged sword, that can chop fruit, but can also, be fatal. And so I think that we want to look at AI tools now as having a positive influence on cultures that have historically been kind of undermined by technology. And so I think that Debbie Deer and she's doing outreach to children and students using practical ideas for using, like, she uses VR headsets and stuff like that. Like, it's really quite cool to kind of show how AI and digital media can actually be a reflection of BIPOC creators' inner voice rather than a way to kind of subjugate and undermine them. So that's a really interesting one. And I just see a lot of like teachers in the classroom who are using AI tools effectively, and sometimes they can not be used well because they are replacing critical thinking. But if you're using an AI tool, for example, to give a kid with ADHD or is on the spectrum an opportunity to write a well-formed essay that articulates their thought that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to get out there, I think is an incredible use of AI, as opposed to, kids who might say, well, I'm struggling. I've been writing this essay and I'm polishing it. It's not fair that you're letting this other kid just use AI to write their essay. But there's a certain privilege in having the ability and the focus and the mental just cognition to put together a well-formed essay so that you get to express your idea. Whereas another kid who might have a fantastic idea, but just doesn't have the ability to put out an essay that way, with guidance and without just completely undermining their creative agency, but with guidance and the right instruction to work with an AI tool to kind of bring their idea to fruition. And I think that, looking at BIPOC communities, looking at, kids who just otherwise just have been gate kept out of industries. And a lot of musicians can say this as well, that they've been gate kept out of industries, but now with AI tools, they're able to just bypass big studios and get their work distributed. I mean, I think that's a really positive example of AI for good.
And it's just a perfect example of technology kind of opening up opportunity, and something like even we saw with the advent of social media and the ability for people to get their opinions and voices out there who may not have been able to before. So those are some really neat examples of folks kind of taking their own agency in their hands using AI. So thank you for sharing those. And thank you so much for being here with me today. I feel like we could talk for a long time, but we only have half an hour. So I'm going to let you go now. But thanks again, Ronit, for being here with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. And thank you for doing the good work. MediaSmarts is fantastic and so much needed now more than ever. Thank you.
Thanks so much.